Hey there.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
You ready for some good news?
Yeah, I am.
I had a meeting with Herbalife today, and they're needing some help in Bethesda, Maryland.
Oh, I love that.
Now, it's a long shot, but it's like he said, their HR going to have to approve it, but he's having a meeting next week. He wants to talk to him about what I did in the training the two times that I came out to the Memphis location. And he also wanted me to know that he's going to be retiring April 1st. So I'm just praying that we can get this going. And Jim, I really just wanted to stay in my little corner of the world, but I'm like, no, I'm going for this. Bethesda, Maryland, here I come. I enjoyed traveling when I was younger. I've just, Atlanta and Dallas where my gift shows were, but I'm ready. I'm just so ready.
Outstanding. Good for you. Man, I love that. By the way, you look really put together today.
I just came back maybe an hour ago from that meeting, so
Oh, well,
I'm
good.
glad because I'm just ready to turn the corner and I've got 75 to 80 active Catholic priests on April the 19th for my first full day from 9 to 4.
Outstanding.
I've got two PowerPoints because they were so big. I had to break them up, morning PowerPoint to afternoon PowerPoint.
Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about that is you involve your audiences a lot. So that's going to keep the pressure from being on you. Early in my speaking career, I used to think, oh my gosh, I've got 6 hours to fill or whatever it was, 8 hours in some cases. And I tried to fill that with 8 hours of speaking. Oh man, that was
That's
miserable.
tough.
And it was miserable for the audience because that's too much.
Yeah.
In a longer program, you definitely need to break it up like that. So good on you. Last night
And
I
when they
had
go to lunch, I'm going to tell them when they come back, I got a pop quiz because I do. Hey, Jody.
good.
Hi.
Yep. Last night I had a visitor here from 48 years ago in Little Rock, Arkansas, a good friend of mine who I knew through the JCs and who later went on to become the Secretary of State of Arkansas under Bill Clinton. And my sister worked for him as the state's calligrapher. And his name's, believe it or not, Paul Revere.
Oh,
Spelled Riviere. And he lives in Nashville. That's why I mentioned it, Lisa.
oh,
And he was down here for a wedding, or is down here for a wedding. So we had dinner last night. And man, what fun. Just,
awesome. That's awesome. Before we get started, I wanted to tell you I am here next week, but I'll be in Atlanta the next week. And I wanted to help you with EdgeCon conference if you need help next week before I leave.
Thank you very much.
Have you looked at that?
At EdgeCon,
Yes.
I've talked to Dave Kaufman, and I'm doing a prep session with them at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, the 22nd.
Okay.
And yeah.
What day will you be on? Do you know the 10th or the 11th?
Yeah, I'll be on the 10th
Okay.
at 10:30 a.m. to noon.
Okay. If you need something from me, please reach out next week because, like I said, I'm here, but then I head to Atlanta because I've got Marriott hotels coming back to Atlanta on that Tuesday, and I don't come back.
I'm in crunch mode getting my Mentor Minutes books finished with Michael Butler so that we can have them in print on site in Nashville. And then I'm going to make a special offer of like the Acorns to Oak Trees video series with the book and some other kind of a bundle to make it special for them.
Perfect. Wonderful.
There you go. All right, we're going to start in sometime in the next 60 seconds. Here's my update on today. I have been all morning long. Why? Because I bought a new iPhone 14 and activated it on Wednesday, and everything was fine on Thursday. And this morning, everything was not. And so it not only affected the phone, it affected my Wi-Fi and my internet, which I only resolved like 20 minutes ago. Starting early this morning on the phone, tech support, internet support, phone support, back in. So I did a few push-ups and did some other stress reduction exercises. Oh, to get back into normal, calm, thoughtful zone. But still, I can't do email. I have to use Paula's phone. And if I get an email, I have to send a text from her phone to respond to it because my email has some kind of a bizarre gremlin. So later that'll be fixed. For right now, it's all about going pro.
Yep.
Yep. About you guys. Jody, what's up? What's new?
I've been working with a couple of different people. One of the people I had mentioned to you has a business that he's had for over 20 years, and it's still struggling like it was 20 years ago. And I've given him advice little by little here and there. And he always says, you give me the best advice. You give me the best feedback. I really need you to mentor me. And I said, well, okay, we should talk about my fee then. And all of a sudden he went, what do you mean?
Oh, it's not.
I said, well, you need my help and I'm going to help your business grow exponentially. And he said, I didn't realize you charge. And I said, well, we talked a little bit and I said, I really think that, we have good synergy. And he said, I do too. He's a yogi. I'm a yogi. There's a lot of parallels. He really wants to work with me. He has 2 other mentors and I think the other 2 don't charge him. But they also haven't gotten him to where he wants to go.
There you go.
So, I said, why don't you think about it a little bit? I did the takeaway. Why don't you think about it? And why don't we talk again? I'll send you an email on Friday and, we'll be back in touch. He needs to really think about how important this is to him. And, if it's a priority right now for him, or if it's going to interfere with the other mentoring that he's getting from those 2 other folks, well, then go ahead and work with them and we can follow it back up again in 3 months.
I like that.
So then he called me back and he said, I have another question for you.
Very good. Well, I had just, hello, Michael. Hello, Laurie. I had just asked Jody what's going on. She said that there's a guy that she's known for quite some time, and she's been sort of guiding him to, from one time to the next in how to get his business act together better. And he said, I need you to mentor me. And she said, fine, let's talk about my fee. And he went into shock. Oh my gosh. I have to pay for things with you? Gee, I pay for other things, but I didn't think,
Yeah. And this isn't a friend of mine. This is literally somebody I've met through business who had some faults with his online store that I pointed out to him and some problems that I pointed out to him. And, I was in a very nice way. And he said, nobody has given me feedback of this quality before. Yeah. So he thinks I'm valuable.
Well, I think something I would add to the dialogue, if I were you, I would add to the dialogue early on. And if you say something like, let's talk about my fee, just say, this is something I do professionally. So let's discuss, what the appropriate fee would be, or let's talk about my fee, whatever you say next. But to let him know early that this is something you do professionally. It's kind of like people saying to me over the years, hey, would you come speak to my company? We'll buy you lunch. No, I'll buy just pay my fee.
Well, he knows my background, which is why he wants me. And originally I was going to introduce him to some partners to help him grow his business. But then I realized he's not ready to be handed over to these folks. Yeah. They will look at me and say, why would you give us this guy? He isn't ready. And I didn't want to say that to him, but I just said, I don't feel that you're ready for me to hand you off yet.
Yeah, that's good. Well, let me make sure everybody's aware of everybody else. Laurie, welcome. Great to see you. I sure enjoyed our coffee chat the other day. That was delightful. And I forgot my wallet. I drove there without a driver's license or any money on me. And so she was gracious and bought my coffee.
I spent $2
Yeah,
on him. Oh
I
my.
know. And think of the interest.
Mhm.
So anyway, Laurie and I had a really good conversation talking about the message that she is solidifying to do the things that she's going to do in growing her women's shelter and that whole side of her professional world. Michael D. Butler is in San Antonio, and he owns Beyond Publishing, and Beyond Publishing is the one who published Intelligent Curiosity and High Rev for Small Business and the whole series of 13 Steps to Riches. There you go. And more to come. And
More to come. There's always more to come. I think you've got a vault somewhere with the content from just great content.
Yeah, I'm pretty much overly blessed when it comes to content. That's for sure. What most
Yeah.
speakers and subject experts start out needing, I definitely don't need. And so I'm just converting everything into consumables. And my latest book is a redo of a previous book being The Power Minute. The latest iteration is called Mentor Minutes. And it's how to reach the top 1% of any field you choose. Because if you think about it, if a person's certified as a professional coach, what they're certified in is the coaching process and the basic skills of question, answer, guiding, goal setting, monitoring, all that kind of thing. What I'm doing with Cathcart Institute is certifying people as professional experts at the end of a year of going through the Experts Academy. So what's an expert? You take the skills that would be essential to get to the top of any field, and those are the skills that I focus on. Whereas the individual skills for, guitar repair or rocket science, you have to get in your particular niche. So that I'm certifying a new category that people haven't thought of up to now. It's kind of like coaching never was thought of as a category until about the 1980s. And a guy named Thomas Leonard sort of pioneered that, and other people picked it up. And then they started the International Coaching Federation and the Association of Management Consultants and other groups like that. Anyway, the new field that I've plowed is professional expert. And I'm going to give more and more definition, structure, and certification to that as we go forward. So that's what I'm up to. And Michael's got that book.
And Lisa's excited. We just talked about Nashville. She's going to be selling that book on your table in a few weeks. So
Dynamite. So you're going to be at EdgeCon? Or no.
I'm going to be at EdgeCon.
Lisa,
She's going to be at EdgeCon. Got it.
Yeah, I might be if my calendar permits. If my calendar permits, I would love to be.
I gave him the dates when since he just was sharing that with you that we had a conversation to surprise you, Jim. And the surprise is Michael and I are going to work on a project for you, and you will have the ability to name it and have the thumbs up on every quote. But we are going to put together a Jim Rohn, a Zig Ziglar, a little book of quotes, pocket-sized paperback, because I've been collecting your quotes and following you now for 7 years, but I've known you for almost 15. And so Michael is going to fund it, and I'm going to be the project manager on the project. And we are going to move forward with this to surprise you with a little paperback, because I've always wanted this.
Thick. I think this is going to be a thick book, though. He's got a lot of good quotes.
Wow. Well,
so anyway, that's the surprise for today. And we hope that you're as excited as we are.
I definitely am. And I just want to say, aw. That's just, that's,
There needs to be more Jim Cathcart in the world. We both feel the same way. I think everybody on the call feels that way. And Lisa has
Bless
been
you.
working with you and knowing you a lot longer than I have. But as I've had the opportunity to dive into your stuff and work with you on these projects, Jim, and you spoke at our event last year, you're speaking again in April in Dallas, and it's a gold mine because you're teaching people how to be the expert and reuse their content. And what better time than now? You know, the printing press brought us out of the dark ages, and your books are doing so much for entrepreneurs to fast track and really collapse the learning curve in every industry. Lisa and I were talking about direct sales, insurance, corporate. I mean, your stuff works. And one reason we're so excited about this latest book, Mentor Minutes, is it is the 1% that will work in any industry. You could plug and play this into ministry, into direct sales, into startup and venture funding. I mean, any industry you could plug it into and it would work. So
Thank
this
you.
book with Lisa is, I'm really excited because I know she's a detailed project manager. She's got her favorite quotes, and it'll be interesting to see what you thumbs up or thumbs down. I mean, it might be 300 pages. I don't know.
But we Michael, we want to keep because I've said before, you know, we thought about it and we grew it bigger and it was going to be hardback. I want to keep with the concept of it being small paperback, can go into a thank you note, can also be used as a promotional piece for different industries like banking and real estate and car, but it's just a little leave behind as well. So that's kind of where the thought is. So
I'm just bragging on the fact that he's got so much good content. It's going to be hard to whittle it down to, but we are going to have your advertisement pages in the back featuring everything else you do. So,
wow, thank you. Well,
you're welcome.
Taking that first off, just sincerely, thank you very much. That makes my heart glow. That same idea could be used by Laurie and Jody, by any of us actually, because it doesn't have to be quotes. It can be, it could be quips or tips or whatever, but the idea of it being a pocket-sized book, you know, something like the size of this photo of Michael and me, you know, something that size you could put into a coat pocket or or purse or wherever. Whatever you want your intended market to know about you or to understand from you, you could put it into something like that, and you could reproduce these for, you know, barely more than the price of a expensive business card that had fancy pieces to it, and have a whole bunch of those and send them out in the mail, hand them out, you know, keep a stack of them in the trunk of your car. I do that, by the way, with my little acorn, my little pewter acorn. I've over the years bought those in batches of 100 acorns at a time. And when I first started doing it, they were 38 cents a piece.
Wow.
Yeah. And now I don't know what they are.
How much was gas then?
Bottom, they were about a buck and a half each. And I don't know what they are now, but that's the one. Exactly the one Jody's holding up. Last night, I had one in my pocket when I had dinner with my friend Paul Revere and his wife Carolyn. And Michael, that's spelled Riviere. And I've known Paul for 48 years. And he came to Austin and we got together for the first time in decades and just had a wonderful dinner. It's amazing the things he remembered and I remembered, you know, that filled gaps for him. That was great. But at the end of the evening, I said, come here, I have something for you. And he said, well, you gave me copies of some of your books. And I said, yeah, but this is special and it's different. And I said, hold out your hand. And I put the little acorn in his hand and I did my ritual. You know, the ritual is, this is an acorn. It's made of pewter so that it picks up your body heat and it's always pleasant to touch. And it has 3 parts, stem, cap, and seed, past, present, future. And then I relate it to the recipient and I say the stem represents the legacy you're carrying from all the previous generations. Their imprint still lives in your DNA. The cap holds on to and protects the seed until it's ready to grow by itself. So that your parents, your guides, your heroes, your mentors, your role models. And the seed contains the potential that's still in you and the potential that will show up in the lives of every person you touch, both directly and indirectly, for all time. Your life matters. So nurture your nature. And at that point, I fold the hand over. And that little ritual has developed over many, many years. It was much more primitive and awkward at first, but that's a way that feels right to me of doing it now. And so that's how I do it. Well, he almost cried. You know, that's
really
a
powerful.
meaningful moment. So
Yeah.
if each of you can create something that's either a token or a little booklet
Yeah.
or pamphlet or something like that, or like what Tony Alessandra and I used to do. Oh, there you go. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Jody, tell us about yours.
Mm-hmm.
She'll unmute here.
It's a little keychain and it says balance. Every year, instead of a resolution, I choose a word to focus on for the year. Sometimes I change it about halfway through the year if I feel like I've been really efficient. But this word I carried around with me for many years because it was my biggest struggle, was figuring out how to balance it all. And so this is always in my mind. It's always been with me. And balance has, I think, really helped me to realize where I can step back or where I have to step forward. You know, how much more do I have to do here? Am I complete over here?
Can you hold that up for
I
a
don't
minute?
have a ritual and I only have one.
Okay. If you had, just hold it by the chain for a moment. Okay. If you had a number of those and you carried it with you, carried one with you most of the time, and never, in my case, I never have an intended target in advance. I just carry one in my pocket. And when I see someone where I feel the impulse, then I share it. What you could do, Jody, is just a simple thought. You're holding it like this. You could say, I have something for you. You say, this little token says balance. And it's something that I keep with me all the time. And it reminds me that to not get so lost in one part of my life that I forget to take care of the other parts. And, you know, so I'm making this up. I'm rapping I'm scatting or jazzing as we go. But you do that and have it down to like 3 sentences or something and say, I just thought you would find this valuable. And you will have people years from now saying, hey, Jody, remember me? No, but I've seen that before. Who are you?
Right.
Yeah. By the way, another twist on this, and Loree, look at this. See these cards? Okay. These, when we had these printed, I had them scored, but not folded. So it's scored so that it could be put in an envelope and easily mailed. But if it's folded and then pressed like that, it goes easily in a pocket or, you know, in a carry case like that. What I did was I took 2 things that I focused on. This was at the time when my book, The Acorn Principle, came out. And the first thing I did was I had an acorn, thank you, Lisa. I had an Acorn Principle card done, and it's got some of the basic ideas from the Acorn Principle book on the cover. It's got a couple of tools on the back. This is about life balance, and the other part up here is about the difference between external and internal diversity. So many people talk about diversity, but they seem to always be talking about the external, you know, about the skin color, the gender, the size, the shape of the person, where you went to school, what your SAT score was, all external. IQ rating, the language you speak, your social status, your political party, your church, you know, that's all external to you. Well, what about internal diversity? Because externally, every single human being is different. Even identical twins have enough different to distinguish them so that they're not the same as the other person. The internal diversity is the difference in our value priorities, the difference in our personal velocities, the way we're wound, the difference in the arrangement of our multiple intellects. You know, we've got many, many ways of being intelligent, and my top three might be different from your top three. Difference in thinking style, conceptual, strategic, operational. Difference in background imprint and the impression it left on you. Difference in behavioral style, personality patterns. Difference in psychological blind spots. When you understand those, it doesn't matter how old or young or male or female or black or white or green the person is. You really understand the person. So that's one of the points in the Acorn Principle teaching is don't focus on the observable differences. Focus on the meaningful differences. And then you'll know how to connect with people. And you'll also know the source of every conflict you ever have. If you understand that, if a couple, for example, understood the differences in their internal diversity, then they could go back over the past years, list every argument they ever had, and source it to one of those. And say, well, duh, no wonder. And I was trying to get you, to change the structure of your DNA, which was virtually impossible, or literally impossible. We need to just find a better way of responding to that. So then on the inside of this, I put a number of categories that a person could read the book, The Acorn Principle, and then answer these little questions to determine what is their acorn profile, their internal profile. And we called that the inner view. Paula came up with that title. And then to make this even more valuable, now look at, this is not much space, right? That's one little, whatever, 5x7, I guess. And it's laminated, which is cool. And on some of these, I've had the edges rounded just because it feels better to work with it. But this one, not so. But I came up with 11 ways to expand your life this year. And so I just put a little inspiring item on there for a person to read, like invest in yourself. Set aside a portion of each year's income to acquire new tools and teachers to increase your potential. And then it goes on for a paragraph. And things like that, that a person could just take this, leave it on their desk and say, okay, today is the 11th day of the week. I'm going to focus on number 11, right? So, or 11th day of the month, but think of your message. How could you do this? Like Jody, how could this be like a first aid checkup, like triage? You're talking to an entrepreneur who wants your help, and you say, here's something I want you to hang on to. And by the way, you could sell these, because I did. When I had a stack of these that I was using all the time, I sold them for $5 a piece. And they cost me, in the bulk I had, less than $1 a piece to produce them. So it was a nice little profit item. And I would sell 100 or 300 or 500 at a time for an entire audience. Well, it's also got my phone number and website and email and, all that on the back of it. And if I wanted to, I could build a free offer of some sort into this, or have a web, landing page where a free offer changed from time to time. So that's just some ways you can use that. Now, this I did for the Acorn Principle, which is focused on the person. What about when they hired me for the company? Glad you asked. Acorn Principles for business growth. You remember in one of our recent meetings, I talked about business as an organism, the business as a tree instead of a stack of boxes.
Yeah.
So I put that metaphor on the front of it with all of the little graphics in it. And on the, oh, and by the way, it says the genetic code of an organization, the DNA of a company, is its values, its philosophy, its vision, its mission, and its culture. So that allows me to start a conversation real easily. Someone says, well, can you help me with my company? I say, yeah, where do you feel the need in your growth system, reaching out for business, or in your resource system, finding the resources to increase your capability? Well, both. Which one first? Well, the growth system. Okay. Tell me about the DNA of your business. What's the DNA? It's this. Oh, well, our mission is to develop and effectively market the high quality XYZ. Good. Okay. What does that mean to you? I don't know. It's just our mission statement. Aha. Now I've got a starting point, right? Because if they don't identify with their company's mission statement, it doesn't mean anything. And they don't know why they're showing up for work other than to get a paycheck. Right? So I use that. And then on the back, one of the things that I do in some of my presentations is I say, your organization needs pH balance. You know, just like secret deodorant, it's got to be pH balance. pH, profits high. pH, people happy. Most organizations have one of those higher than the other, and they tend to go up and down. But if you can pay attention to both sides in alternating sequence on a regular basis, you can keep them both fairly high. And so I talk about that. And then I go through, see this, rethink your business. And this goes back to my metaphor of the tree. The difference between a mechanical view and an organic view. Mechanical view, you see a business as a machine. And if it's broken, you say we need to re-engineer it, because engineers work on machines or systems. The purpose of a mechanism is output. Its structure is typically a pyramid structure. Top down is the way you manage. Decision-making is done at the top. Controls are by the numbers. Planning is done by the leaders and managers. Motivation is reward or punishment. Success is measured by profits only, usually. A sales goal, what's the goal of selling? A profitable sale. What discipline do you use in thinking about your business? Physics. Because that's what deals with machines and mechanisms and such. And what models do you use for thinking about it? Competitive models like sports or military, where you've got an adversary you must vanquish. And your hiring is based on credentials, skills, and experience. So that's the way management's been done for hundreds of years. Organic view, and I'm going to go quicker on this. It's an ecosystem, not a machine. It's alive. The goal is growth and fruitfulness, productivity. The structure is a living network structure, like a tree. Management's by collaboration, decision-making done at the need, not at the management level only. How do you control it? By the numbers? No, by the vital signs. And planning is done by everyone. The motivation is not reward and punishment. It's a sense of purpose, and reward and punishment's added. Success is measured by advancement. The goal in its selling is a profitable, ongoing relationship. And you use biology instead of physics to think about it. And you use ecosystems and fitness as your model instead of military and sports. And then talents and interests are what you hire by. Talents and interests and values, because the rest of it's trainable. And then I put 15 ways to grow your business inside and did it like this. And then I came up with a little model over here where if you've got 15 ways to grow your business, like grow your existing markets or grow your pipeline or give more than you have to, or grow your profit per sale or whatever, then it's pick one from the list, write it on a separate sheet of paper, describe your current situation as it relates to that one. Okay. And then explore it with the following questions. What's working well? What's not working well? What's missing? Who could help? If we got all the breaks, how good could this turn out? Who should take the action that's needed, etc. So I'm just saying, one little tiny piece of paper, you can get a lot done. And these things live on, and you can call back. There's a 15-part consulting assignment right there. You send that to your client digitally or in print form like this, and then you call the person up and you say, which one are we working on today? Or you tell them, we're working on number 3 today. And they say, okay, let me get my card. And there's your structure. So it just, makes life so easy. And then someone says, well, Lori, could you create a little, like a series of short video messages for us on this? Yes, as a matter of fact, it'll be a 15-part series. And the first one will be this one. And that becomes your workbook for the little video series that you do. And you post that up on YouTube and set up a subscription basis or a access based on link only, whatever access you want. And that's the way you work with the people. Also, you can, at the end of a speech, you can say, everyone, I want you to go to lisamariedavid.com and click on cool little card that Jim was talking about. And that's what we're going to work on today. QR code, share my card.
So I want to add that you encouraged me last year to get a digital business card, and I can't begin to tell you how many. I don't ever do a PowerPoint that this is not the last slide. I was at the Germantown Chamber this past week, and I just opened this up, and it actually caused a conversation. What do you have? That's your business card. How does that work? I mean, people started, let me scan it. Let me scan it. So it was kind of cool. So I just want to add that if we do things like this, we want to make sure we add these, because it's becoming really a part of culture now. And I'm not tech savvy, you know that, but this has been well worth every penny.
By the way, when you do that, there are a couple of things. One is you can go to your provider and become an affiliate. And when people say, I want one, then you get a finder's fee. So that's kind of cool. So whoever did it for you, if yours was Ken Walls, like it was for me, then
yes,
you go to Ken and you say, hey, I want to be set up so that I get a finder's fee for this, because I've done that. And then that leads to other people and other people and other people. As a matter of fact, I may have a link for you, Lisa, that I could just send. But the other thing is, when you use a QR code in your slides, if there's an intro slide or a coming soon slide that's up on the screen during the break, have your name or your topic and that QR code. And this is before you've ever been introduced. So the people are sitting there in the audience and they say, oh, we're going to hear about entrepreneurial skills that make or break your business. Take a picture of that. Oh, well, that's cool. Oh, save, yeah. And so now you're in, and you haven't even begun your speech. And then during your speech, if there's a slide where you leave it on screen for a while, have one in the corner. And make it tasteful, so it's appropriate and all that. It doesn't look like you're pushing it, but tastefully put it in the corner just like a logo. And then on your final slide, don't just have a QR code. Have the closing thought you want in their minds, and maybe your name or whatever, and the QR code. And if that stays there for a little while, that's good. Now, the problem with that at live conferences sometimes is like Toastmasters International. Lisa was there, but I may have told you that I was invited to be the opening keynote speaker, which was a big event, big event. There were like 800 to 1,000 in the room and a few thousand more online around the world watching. And so I did this keynote and I had slides. And I had met with the sound crew ahead of time, but I failed to work out a couple of things that would have made probably $30,000 cash on site difference had I handled them better. What? Yeah, that much that night, that much difference. Item one, I had the QR code in my slides. When they got to the end of my speech, my final slide came on screen. I was thanking the audience and they clicked off the slide and went back to live. So the audience saw this beep and they said, what was that? That was it. Also, during my speech, I neglected to remember to tell them, leave the slides up long enough to be seen and understood, but quickly get off the slide and go back to live action so that the video at the end of this has my whole speech, not speech for a while and then a slide for a long time while you listen to the soundtrack. And then, oh, here comes Jim again. And now we go to a slide. So there was a scene in the middle of my speech where I was talking about how I got entertained in China as a keynote speaker. They would bring me in, in a crowd, and I had an entourage of like between 8 and 12 people trying to keep the audience from grabbing pieces of me or getting selfies with me on the way to the stage. And so, music, lights, sound, all this excitement and everything. And I'm coming in and going to the stage. And so I was describing that. But they're still showing only my slide on the screens. So the live audience, they could, if they were looking around like this, they could see me way up front and tell what I was doing physically. But for the most part, most of the people just heard me and saw a static slide from my earlier thought. And then I spontaneously ran down the center aisle in mock duplication of what happened in China. And it got a big laugh. And it was great. But the people who watched the video after, they're saying, what? That's not funny. Why are they laughing? So just remember that whatever tool like this you come up with, you got to make sure that it actually gets seen. And that takes a lot of little detailed coordination like that sometimes.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you've got a product table or a consultant table or a sign the book author table outside, where that table is matters a lot if you're expecting to get traffic. And in addition to having that table be in the right place, and by the way, where we recommend you put it is rock in the river. In other words, be a great big rock midstream of where the people are going to get to the food or the bathrooms or wherever they go next, so that they have to pass by your table, so that you're doing the handshakes and the signs and the signing books and selfies and all that sort of stuff. And the other thing is make sure the timing is right. Because I've had occasions on many speaking engagements where they run right up to the last minute and then everybody left. And there was no time for anyone to stick around and go to a product table or go to a meet the author moment or, ask a question moment or something like that. There you go. Let me do a quick.
Next month.
Go ahead.
So next month, they're all in the room in Nashville. Yeah, all the tables are in the room.
Right. And there's going to be a break that's long enough that the people can go out to the bathroom or the snacks and come back in the room. And that's
right.
Good. Yeah, I've confirmed that with David. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Quick check on homework. Here's homework. watch at least the first 2 Acorns to Oaks videos. I hope you've done that. And every week, watch at least the next 1 or 2. So if you see the intro, which is 3 minutes and 37 seconds, and then the Acorns to Oaks, which is about 18 minutes, that's good. That's the starting point. And not Acorns to Oaks. What do you want? Which is the Acorns to Oaks number 2. Then number 3 would be your next one. Please watch those, because it makes so much more meaning to a lot of these other things we talk about. Second thing, the future you exercise. It would really be helpful to me to have a copy of your answers on future you. So please send that to me as soon as you can. The next one is reputation creation, which goes hand in hand with future you. Future you, here's the question, just to remind you, which you already have seen. What words best describe the person you would like to be? What traits do you want others to see in you? What subjects do you want to know a lot more about? What skills do you want to acquire that you don't yet have? How would you like others to regard you? Now, that one's number 5. That goes directly to the reputation creation worksheet. And then it goes on with other things on the future you. Here's how the reputation creation worksheet blends into all this. And it doesn't matter whether you're thinking about your speaking and your message and markets that way, Laurie, or whether you're thinking about, the Entrepreneurship Center, Jody, or whether you're thinking about the way that you're doing all the various things as a publisher, Michael, or as a trainer and a consultant, Lisa. Here's the thing. I got this from a Stephen Covey seminar years ago. Remember when he came out with the 7 habits of highly effective people? There were 7 habits. And the first one was to start with the end in mind. So he did a book on that. First things first. Second book was Sharpen the Axe or something like that. It was about taking time to get better at what you do. And then there was one about time management that was start with the big rocks. If you've got to put rocks and sand and gravel and water into a container, if you start with the big rocks, then there's room for everything else. If not, there's not going to be room for all of it. And so he would do that illustration, but then he had this exercise. So, and I've changed it, but the idea is this. You are already known by several groups of people. Some of those are small, some are large. Some of them don't know you hardly at all. So to them, you are, who is that over there? Right? And others are, you're known intimately. They say, oh, Jody's here, right? Your family, you're that well known and accepted. Okay. So every one of these groups, you already have a reputation. What would you ideally, in a perfect world, like it to be? And so you take each one of these groups, like your spouse, your significant other, the person closest to you in your whole life. What do you want that person to think about you and say about you in their mind when you're not present or listening? How do you want them to think and talk about you when you're not listening? Write down the actual words you want them to say, as if you were putting words in their mouth. And rewrite it until you're comfortable that that's exactly the way it ought to be said. Okay? Then go to father or mother, if they're still living. Or what do you want your kids to think about you, say about you? And then employer or manager, or whoever you report to, or coworkers, if they're reporting to you. What do you want those people thinking? And then neighbors and friends, how do you want them to regard you? And you say, well, my answer is the same for everybody. No, it's not. It's really, really not. What about business partner or colleague? How do you want them thinking and talking about you when you're not there? In no case is this what you want them saying to you. You want them thinking these thoughts when you're not present. And then what do you want to be able to think and say about yourself when you're looking in the mirror and thinking about what kind of person you are and where you're going in your life? So when you articulate all of those, you'll find that there's great similarity, of course, in all the answers, but there's also a fluctuation from person to person, situation, context to context. And once you've done all those, look over them again and try and summarize it all in one summary statement of maximum 3 sentences. It's a powerful, powerful exercise. Let me show you. I'll show you how powerful it is to me, because all these years later, I still have mine from the Stephen Covey seminar back when. Yeah, easy for you to say, Jim. Prove it. I will. Chill. It's in here.
And while you're looking for that, may I ask a question?
Say it again.
Can I ask you a question while you're looking?
Yeah.
Who is Joe Willard?
Joe Willard is my mentor and dear, dear, dear friend from Mass Mutual Tulsa Agency back in 1976. He hired me away from the USJC's national headquarters, where I was the head of leadership training for the 350,000 members they had. And he said, I need you in my agency. Come over and move in with us. And I said, well, Joe, you know, nice penthouse offices and all this, but you're out of my league, way over my head. And besides, I don't want an insurance career. He said, I know you want to be a speaker and an author, and you want that, and you want to grow up to be Earl Nightingale. I said, yeah. He said, well, you got to do it somewhere. And I like the way you think and act, and I want my people to be like you. So move in with us. I'll give you a corner office, the use of my secretarial pool, which was a big office admin staff. And you have a receptionist full-time. You'll have a conference room and a full-time cook who can prepare full meals for your guests who come up to meet you in your corner penthouse office. And I said, well, I could do that. I said, but I'm making, you know, this isn't going to be easy. I'm making $1,500 a month at the JC's. So, you know, something's got to cover my nut. And he said, I think we could handle that, Jim. And so I moved in with him, and I was there 6 years while I built my speaking career. And I got to where I was doing 120 speeches a year and gone almost all the time. But I gave him 16 days a year in return for the office space ongoing. And so we discontinued the salary during the first year. But the agency grew from like 75 million to 231 million in annual production during that time. And so we became the darling of Mass Mutual out of 125 agencies. And Joe sent me out to teach the other agencies how to do what we do in Tulsa. And they paid me a fee for doing it. So that was a great launch to my speaking career. And I was finally able to pay Joe back in 2018. I said, Joe, you know, I'm touring China on all these fancy lecture tours. He said, yeah. And I said, I want you to be my guest. All expenses paid, first class round trip. He said, well, okay. And so I flew him from Tulsa to Taiwan, Taipei, and we started there, and it got him a suite and me a suite. And, you know, we went from city to city in Taiwan and then mainland China, and just had 2 weeks of the best time that the two of us had ever had. And I was speaking to thousands and thousands of people in every city. And I brought him up on stage as my mentor to show him off to the audience and had him sit down and answer questions. And so they were asking him to sign autographs. So kind of a cool story. Thank you for asking. Where did you run across it? In one of my books or something?
I think it might be chapter 3 or 4 of the 16 chapters that you want us to listen to. It's like your opening line is where you got your quote from. And so then I was wondering, well, who is this guy and who's that guy's mentor?
Yeah. His mentor, I don't know for sure who his mentor was. I know he was a reader, of all the motivational things that we all read. But I remember he grew up in Lockney, Texas, not Lockney, Amherst, Texas, which is about the size of Subway sandwiches and one office, one shop. And he was an old country boy, and he joined the army, and he went to Alaska and came back, and he went in the insurance business and then just rose to the top because his work ethic was unstoppable. And he had a very bright mind. And he said, he calls me JC. He says, JC, he said, you know what I did? He's got this long Texas drawl. He says, what I did was I wanted to be as successful as I could be. So I just said, how would the agency leader do this? And whatever I did, I would think, how would the agency leader organize their day, make this call, handle this problem, present these ideas? And I upgraded every single thing I did, and I became the agency leader. And then I became the regional leader, and then a national leader. And then they made me general agent of a new agency, and we became President's Trophy national leader in that. And he was elected to the executive committee of the General Agents Association for the whole company. And he's retired now and a very wealthy man.
So is that where the question came, your quote, what would the person I'd like to be do the thing I'm about to do? Is that where that came from? That's where that came from.
See,
Okay.
Jody's got the mouse pad.
Yeah.
So here is my answer set, and I'm not going to go through all of it, but I want to highlight this for you. This was March 26, 1998. And this is what I'm looking for from you in the reputation creation answers. For me, first role, husband. These are words I'm putting in Paula's mouth, okay? Jim always makes me feel loved and lovable. I admire his character and his wisdom. His intelligence amazes me. He makes me laugh. Nobody's ever been as open and transparent as he is. This is how he teaches too. He makes me a better person. Wow. If I could make that happen, that would be achieving a miracle. Father, for Jim Jr., I only had the one child. Dad truly, deeply loves me. He'd give his life for me. His own life is an inspiration to me that I can do and be as well. He's shown me that I am capable, worthy, and special. As a business owner or employer, Jim is what he preaches. He's real. He's an exceptional businessman. His integrity, wisdom, discipline, and caring are genuine. He's humble, easily accessible, good with money, and a good marketer. I want him to run all my businesses. Cool. As a speaker, I love to hear Jim speak and tell stories. We are better people because of his speeches. He changes us toward our best and brings simple, powerful ways to do important things. Human being, talking to myself. I've stayed fit and healthy since I was 30 years old. At 30 years old, I was not. I weighed 200 pounds and smoked. I've stayed fit and healthy. I've grown through all my life. I've made enhancements to the world. I admire myself, and others are better off because I have lived. When you are able to get that intimate and that bold in your answers, then those answers will have tremendous meaning to you. And so if you come up with one simple paragraph that summarizes all of them, that paragraph is something you can carry around with you and look at frequently, and revive the feelings you had as you read the entire list. So this exercise, if done that sincerely, has enormous power. And it helps reinforce the future you picture. You know, if you can picture it, you can create it. If you can't picture it, then it's just a matter of doing assignments, and that's kind of useless. And these are all useless assignments if a person doesn't take it sincerely. If someone's trying to get an A in the Going Pro program, they're going to fail it miserably. Michael, I can't hear you. I know you spoke. He may have said he had to go. Or maybe he had a call and he had to just hop offline for a moment. Questions or comments, feedback on that?
I have a few questions. I'm not sure how to raise my hand in Zoom. I was trying to Google it, but I guess apparently I don't know how to
Lisa
raise my
can tell
hand.
you.
I can tell you if you go down to the three little dots on the
Yeah.
bottom toolbar that say more,
Yeah, I did that.
okay, and then if you will click on reactions, you should have some reactions pop up.
Oh, I just see it. Okay, now I see it.
There
Okay.
you go. There you
Well,
go.
I was trying to, I put in the chat, I had a couple questions, but I don't want to get us off topic. I did think, I wrote down some neat things with your, your card, your pocket card, because I'm
Yeah.
going to do a conference and all that. So I do a lot of those little pocket cards, but I was thinking of some different things I could do listening to you guys, and that's really cool. And but I did have a few questions, and it may be in your book, in your video, that I haven't.
Okay, go ahead.
Do. I mean, I think it would be helpful for me. I'm curious sort of what, I know you started with the JCs in your speaking career, but I'd sort of like to know the chronology of how your speaking career, what you did and how what happened. And then you did this, and then you did this, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. I think that would be fascinating to hear.
Okay.
And then I have another question after that, but I think
Tell
that
me
would
the
be
other question, because that first one is a story. And
okay.
the second one, maybe I can answer more
This
succinctly.
is probably quicker. So I've been just looking online, and what's weird is I got an email. It's from one of my healthcare groups that was like, it's from creativedevelopmentworks.com, their speakers bureau. And they were like, get a forum in front of physicians. Well, I know how to do that all day long, and I can talk to doctors, whoever I need to talk to. But they also do it for professional speakers, and they have a whole like training area. They can be your agent, that kind of thing. Then I looked at National Speakers Association, PRPR, Speaker Flow, Affinity Partners. And I'm like, okay, you and I, when we talked, you said, oh, don't get an agent. But I'm just curious about who these people are, what they do, how helpful they are. I get that you've got to define your market and do the things that we're doing with you, but at some point, sometimes you've got to find a way to get your foot in the door somewhere. And then like podcast hosting, I have no idea what that is, and I'm looking up platforms. What are those? I'm just very curious about all this stuff because I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Even
Well,
though I know sort of
first-
know what it is. So
Yeah, my first advice is be very, very slow
mhm.
about making a commitment to anyone like that. The creative, whatever that agency is, they are one of maybe 400 agencies in the nation that are speakers bureaus. Now,
Okay.
out of let's say it's 400, it could be many more or a little less, but there are about that many entities in the nation that call themselves a speakers bureau. Most of them, most being like easily 300 of the 400,
Mhm.
are not a full-time viable business. They are a side gig. Like someone says, hey, we're running a marketing agency. Why don't we open a speakers bureau?
Mm.
How would we do that? We'll just put speakersbureau@us.com.
Uh-huh.
Okay, yeah, cool. Let's do that. So now they're a speakers bureau, not. They
Mhm.
just are offering that service. What could we do? Well, we could sign up people and charge them like X $1,000 going in to help, all packaged and everything, and then we'll do a blast to our mailing list and see if that generates anything for them. And then we'll just charge them a piece of any gig that we get for them. And so they'll pay us a portion of their fee. Well, not a good deal. Not a good deal at all, because the speakers bureaus that are in the last 100, the ones that are profitable, and of those, only about 50 could sustain their business only as bureaus and agents. The other 50 are marketing people, and they're charging you for going in. But that last group of 50 or so, those are the leading speakers bureaus in the world.
Mhm.
They're like leading authorities and Washington Speakers Bureau and International Speakers Bureau, National Speakers Bureau, that's Chicago and Dallas. The other, out in Los Angeles, there's a few, but there are speakers bureaus like those that belong to the International Association of Speakers Bureaus, for whom I was, by the way, the first non-bureau owner to ever address their annual meeting.
Mhm.
Back in the 80s, when they first formed, they
Mhm.
brought in me because I was president of the National Speakers Association. And they had trouble listening to me as true listeners, because when I got up to talk to them and collaborate about our industry, they were looking at me like they looked at all speakers, as if I were doing a showcase. And I had to break that wall. You're not watching TV, guys. Stop, look up, raise your hand if you hear me, okay? This is a discussion, not a speech. I'm not trying to show you what I'm like on the platform. I'm trying to get answers. Oh, well, that changes everything. So the whole dynamic of that meeting just transformed in that moment. But anyway, these bureaus that belong to the International Association, they don't charge.
Mhm.
So going in, they'll be happy to refer you out to some of their affiliates, for services you might want, like somebody needs an image consultant, or someone needs a book package or publisher, or someone needs a marketing graphics person. They got those things they can refer you to. But if there's a demand for you, they want you. And the bureaus usually have either an agent or a department or the entire bureau that focuses on a niche industry,
Mhm.
like multi-level marketing or healthcare associations or automotive, or associations in general, because each of those groups speaks a different language and hires for different reasons, and there are patterns you can learn and anticipate what their needs are, so you become better at selling to that market. PRPR is exactly what its name says. That's Daniel Strahan or something Strahan, and was originally, I can see her face, but her name's slow to come. Anyway, two people that developed a PR agency for speakers, and that's who they specialize with. And they offer some good services, and it'd be worth talking with them. Be Known Agency is Daniel Pope and Jacob Eliason, two young guys that live in Tennessee that I call them the boys. And they are part of Going Pro and the Experts Academy.
Mhm.
I'm a client of theirs and they're a client of mine. And they are marketing operations people. So they help you put together the back end of what you do in marketing. And they also help you on the front end to refine what your message is and who it's for.
Mhm.
And so they can do either one item off the menu, snacks, or they can do full course meals for you as needed. And they will be in these meetings from time to time, and you can ask them things that won't cost you anything. You can also just look at what they're doing for Jim and say, oh, well, I can use that part of it for me, and do it without them, So they're there for you. But let's go back to your other people on the list. There are bureaus that there are agencies that want you to pay them a fee to do all these various things. And here's how a bureau works, a real bureau. They say, okay, our job is finding clients. finding speakers is no job. Speakers are going to find us,
Mhm.
unless they are big time celebrities who nobody can get to. You know, if you want Tom Cruise, well, you're going to have to go to one of the major agencies, and they're probably going to co-broker with whatever talent agency he's listed with. So he might be with William Morris, and Washington Speakers Bureau says, yeah, we can get Tom for you. Let us get back to you. What's the date? March the 3rd. Okay. And they call William Morris agency and say, we need Tom for this. What's his fee? $1 million. Let me get back to you. And they go back and forth and they put it together. All right. So there's that. I would say when one of them comes to you, reach out to me. Send me a link, send me a question. You know, hey, is this credible? Should I explore this further? Because I've gotten a lot of referrals that, weren't particularly impressive. And others that amazed me, like for podcast. Oh, here's another thing before I get to that. At, say, the National Speakers Association, or at some of these multi-level things or big marketing conferences, including EdgeCon, the one that Lisa and I are going to with David Kaufman, they have exhibitors like those that we just talked about. And each one has their own little niche. And they say, Jody, what you're missing from your mix of offerings is you don't have a podcast. We are podcast specialists. Come with us. And well, that's really tempting unless you're aware of how many other options you have. If all you've ever heard about is peanut butter, you never consider steak because it wasn't on the menu. You buy peanut butter. So podcasting's great, but I've done okay for 46 years without podcasting. However, a month ago, I decided to start my own podcast. And I went to Michelle Abraham, who's part of this mix, and her company, amplifyu.ca, CA meaning Canada, is my podcast company. And they do the whole back end for the Wisdom Wednesdays, the Wisdom Parlor. And we're just beginning. We're getting all the assets in place to be able to do that at the level I want to do it. So that's that answer. First answer, I'll get to in a second. Jody, did you have a question related to what I've been sharing? Okay. Anything in what I just described, Laree, that you want to hear more about?
No, I mean, I think you did a good job. It was weird that right after we met, I got that email from that speakers bureau, and I was like, this is bizarre. I need to ask about this.
Exactly.
And I mean, usually I go straight, when I do healthcare stuff, I go straight to the association. And I just did a webinar and a big presentation for an hour with Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, and Louisiana, their healthcare association, all at once.
Good.
And, and I had a topic and they had pre-publicized me. So I know how to get my business marketed that way. I just need to think about, once I get my message and do everything, how do I market myself like I do my business? Because with my business, I get in with all these associations and I do free webinars because it gets me business. In the end, they hire me, so.
And that's one of the quick things, an answer that you need to hear, that there's a lot more to for later on, is make sure every time you do a presentation, you mention, when I'm doing my professional speaking, my area of focus is this. And here's what people are asking me, and this is why I brought it up today. And then you answer the question, and they say, "Well, you do professional speaking? What kind of speaking do you do?" I say, "Well, I focus on these areas, and my adopted cause is this one, and I have a foundation that I'm building for that, and." Just make them aware of the options available, whether it's charitable or for pay. And when someone says, could you do a speech for us? We don't have a budget. Say, well, yes, I can. And I'd love to. And I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm willing to forego my regular fee. Note the word regular.
Mhm.
I'm willing to forego my regular fee if you will simply make a donation to my shelter. And you state an amount that you consider minimum acceptable for the shelter. And, you know, if they give you any, they say, well, we can't make a donation. You say, are you paying for the lunches? Yes. Are you paying for the printing? Yes. Are you paying for the whatever?
Mhm.
Yes. Okay. Then simply consider this one of the hard costs of the meeting. Make a donation and I'll be happy to be your speaker
Mhm.
and get it in writing.
Mhm.
When there's no fee, it's more important to have a contract.
Mhm.
Contract would be a simple one page, and there is in my you know, my video course professional presentations that I sent you each the link to. Okay, please go to that if you haven't, and watch one video or 1 minute of one video. In other words, go and log in and get an idea of what's in there so that it's easy for you to go back and review all the things in there. One of the things in there is my sample contract
Mhm.
that I send out to clients. Another thing is here's what I'll do when I speak for you, my service commitment. Another thing that's in there is 10 vital issues that need to be resolved between speakers bureaus and speakers. So, you know, that's some direct answers to what you're inquiring about, Loree. And it's already in there for you. And anything that's not in there, just simply send me an email and I'll get it to you. We're already at 11 minutes past the hour. I'm sorry for that. I
have
can
one
go a
thing
few
I
more
wanna-
minutes if you guys can.
I have one thing before you close us out, and it's for Jody. When I was listening to her in the beginning talk about the gentleman who was surprised about her fee, I see you make notes like I do. Make a note sometime to talk to Jim about his friend, Patricia Fripp. She has a famous saying that when someone says that, your response to them would be, let me tell you how that worked, smile. And then, and I also encourage you to go
Yes.
on Patricia Fripp's website. She's one of the best at helping speakers. And she has a lot of resources that I think that you both would really enjoy. Patricia Fripp,
Huge fan of
Fripp.
Patricia Fripp. Love her.
Fripp, Patricia Fripp.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
I just
very
wanted
good.
to add that before we closed out
Okay.
today.
Well, here's the quick story, and that's, you know, you think from Jim, quick. Well, so 1972, I heard Earl Nightingale on the radio. You've heard that. I was a clerk at the Housing Authority, didn't know what I was going to do when I grew up. And I thought, I want to do what he does, but I didn't know what that was. So I said, I'll just study what he does. And I found out that that's called applied behavioral science. So it's basically practical psychology or motivational psychology. And so I started studying that and reading all the classic books that I've shown you, you know, the Think and Grow Rich and Power of Positive Thinking and See You at the Top from Zig Ziglar, who was new on the circuit back then, and all those various books. And I kept listening to Earl Nightingale, and then I bought that library of audio cassettes up there on the top shelf. They're in little leather-like binders. And I may have shown you one, but they look like this. And they're a cassette with a script. And there's 36 of those. And I paid $560. I was earning $525 a month. And I paid $560, which today would be about $3,500. That was huge and not a popular decision at home. And at home was just me and Paula and little Jimmy, the baby. And she was saying, how please don't, right? And I said, well, let me talk to the guy. And so the guy who sold it to me, Harold Gash, he said, Jim, listen to these tapes every day for a month. And if you, at the end of the month, you decide you just can't justify it, bring them back. If on the other hand, you want to keep them, figure out how to pay for them. End of the month, I had changed so much from binging on all this inspiration that Paula didn't want me to return to the old me. And she said, why don't you keep them? And so I worked out a payment plan. And then I left my work at the Housing Authority and went to work with Harold Gash selling Earl Nightingale's tapes door to door to businesses in Little Rock, Arkansas. And I joined the JCs, which became my big, supercharged vehicle. So I joined the JCs to form a chapter in my neighborhood, Pulaski Heights. And there were 20 of us, and I recruited 13 of the original 20 by just going door to door in the neighborhood and saying, hey, you're a young person. Why don't you come join the JCs? Let's learn to be leaders, because that's what JCs do, leadership training. And so we got 20 people, and they said, you should be president. And I said, no, I'm not, no. And so someone else was president, and I became the liaison with the state headquarters. So I would go to the state headquarters when they had a meeting, and then I'd come back and report to my chapter. Well, I went to 400 JC's meetings in 2 years after working on weekends.
Wow.
I became fanatically hyperactive in the JCs when I wasn't working. And I quickly became district director in charge of 5 chapters, state chairman in charge of leadership training for all 280 chapters throughout the state. After that, I became president of my chapter and took it to number 3 out of the 280 in the overall rankings. And I was winning awards for the first time in my life. I mean, not even in school did I win awards or get certificates. And now I've got plaques, certificates, pins, things like that, patches. And I mean, every night I come home from work, I have dinner with Paula and Jimmy, play with Jimmy for a couple minutes, hop in the car and go to a JC's meeting. Sometimes 4 hours away, one way. Sometimes 15 minutes away, but 4 hours to Jonesboro, Arkansas and beyond. And drive there, getting just in time for the meeting, give a short presentation, get back in the car, drive part of the way home, pull over in a roadside park, sleep for a little bit, get back in the driver's seat and drive home. Get up the next morning, go to work. 402 years. Well, that was a trial by fire. That was my gauntlet. That transformed me. And I went from being an unmotivated, basically a likable loser, into being a guy that really had a grip on his life and knew where he was going. And I started selling Earl Nightingale's recordings. And shortly thereafter, I got a call from the USJC's national headquarters. They said, how would you like to be a full-time JC? And I said, doing what? They said, does it matter? And I said, no. And they said, can you be in Tulsa soon? I said, I can be there in the morning. Ooh, okay. So I drove to Tulsa and I interviewed for the position of leadership training manager for all 350,000 members. And they said, we'll take it. $1,000 a month. Yay! Hit the big time. Most I'd ever made in my life. And now then I'm in charge of speech training, family communication, couples communication, spiritual development, which was a know what you believe and then live it program, leadership dynamics, leadership training, and personal development, which was motivational training, goal setting and such. And I wrote a book called Communication Dynamics, which was about interpersonal communication. And they published it and 76,000 people bought it the first year. And so that did well. Mm-hmm. So I'm flying around the country now giving speeches. Mm-hmm. I joined the National Speakers Association that was brand new and had 200 members. But I joined it and I got really active in that. And then I left the JCs and went full-time into speaking and training as a protege, or not a protege, as a contractor for Joe Willard in his insurance agency.
Mhm.
And I hung out my shingle, I'm a professional speaker available for hire. And I teach leadership, speaking, interpersonal communication, couples communication, you know, all the things I learned at JC's. It just, I was teaching it my way now. And the first year I made $18,000 in speaking.
Mhm.
And Joe paid me I made $10,000 because Joe paid me $1,500 a month. And so I made $10,000 on my own. Yay. And the second year, Paula quit her $10,000 secretarial job and came to work for me doing whatever clerical work I needed, which was mostly take care of my son and occasionally do a project, right? And so that year, my income went up by exactly what hers went down. So I made $28,000 year one and year two. Year three, $36,000. Year four, $64,000. Year five, $89,000. Year six, $113,000. Year seven, $174,000. So that's how my speaking career evolved in the early days of the career. And I started out doing only the Mass Mutual Agency and a few little groups I'd met through the JCs. And then I started getting requests from other insurance agencies. And so I sent letters to all the Mass Mutual agencies saying, I'm available. And Joe says I'm good. You know, and then that led to Life Underwriters Associations, General Agents Associations, New York Life, Prudential, Connecticut Mutual, you know, and on and on. Ultimately, main stage opening session of the $1 Million Roundtable, the biggest platform in all of life insurance worldwide. That's a big deal, or was for me. And then I got a job doing one seminar for the women's division of the Oklahoma Bankers Association. This was overlapping, not linear. So at the same time as the insurance thing. So Mary Nixon calls and says, will you do a seminar for our bankers group? Yeah. So I drive to a resort in Oklahoma and for, I don't know, $100, do a seminar. And she says, that went really well. Would you do one for the young presidents, young bank presidents? Yes, that went really well. Would you do one for the marketing, the Bank Marketing Institute? Yes. Would you do one for the, I did 27 gigs for them that year, 27, one at a time, building upon it. And then I started writing an article for the Oklahoma Banker magazine. Well, I'm writing a monthly article for that magazine, but each state sent its magazines to the national headquarters of the American Bankers Association. So I started getting calls from the Missouri bankers and the Texas bankers and the California bankers to come give a speech for their conventions. And then the American Bankers Association said, would you write a booklet for us on managing stress? Yes, I will. Now, what did I know about managing stress? Well, nothing clinically, but from a practical standpoint, I knew tons about it. So I wrote a booklet called How to Avoid Falling Face Down on the Bottom Line, because they were also bottom line oriented.
Mm-hmm,
And I talked about attitudinal stressors, situational stressors, relationship stressors, and situational stressors. It went well. And they said, would you serve on our executive faculty for 6 years? And so I did. And I was training new bank presidents in a week-long case study at Colonial Williamsburg, Virginia. And so you can see how each of these became an organic piece that grew into bigger pieces. And that led to other groups, you know, hey, do you ever speak for John Deere dealers? Yeah. And so I did some things for them. And then that led to medical associations. And I was a autoclave orderly in a hospital when I was in high school summer job. And after that, in the Army, I was trained as a combat medic before I went to officers candidate school and became an infantry training officer. And so I understood first aid and that sort of thing. And so when I was hired by Pfizer or by Behringer Mannheim or by Siemens Medical Systems or somebody, or the American Medical Association, I had those links to build on. And when I would speak to doctors, I would speak about leadership, not about doctoring. And so I was able to have credibility among people who way outranked me in their field. So that's the short version of the story.
Good. That's good. It's helping me sort of make sense of, you got into one industry and we're speaking in that industry, then another industry. And so you got to find, your little niche of where you can get into. And I just sort of thought, well, if I heard your experience, it might help my little wheels to roll. And it's very helpful because, it's similar, like even when I started my own business, I had to find my niche, and I got into a certain niche, and then another niche opened up, and then another niche opened up, is sort of how it worked for me. So I'm assuming it, I didn't know it could be the same way or not, but
And I've spoken for the nursing homes, the National Association, and the retirement, the seniors facilities and all that back years ago. Louisville, Kentucky is the last one I remember vividly. And so it's, all the Beverly
enterprises,
and all those companies, I spoke for them over the years. So it goes back to this tree. Grow where you're planted and then branch out. And what happens is when you are doing more with your fellow Amazon licensees, or when you're doing more with the retirement or seniors community, the senior care community, what happens is those people are always married to or used to do something else. And they say, hey, have you ever been involved with the Boys and Girls Clubs, in my case? Yeah. Not actively, but yeah. And so I ended up speaking at their national conference. And then I ended up on the board in another area, for multiple years, raising funds to build new Boys and Girls Clubs. And so it just all comes about through organic growth, as long as you're clear on what you want, how you want to be known, by whom, and what the future you ought to look like in an ideal world where all your dreams come true. Helpful?
Yeah.
Great.
Extremely helpful.
I hope y'all have a great weekend. I have a 3:30, so I'm going to jump off, and I'll see
I'm
y'all
going
next
to bail
week.
out. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much. Bye-bye.
Please go sign up for that speaker, professional presentations thing, to the link I sent you earlier, and just explore. You don't have to open anything, just explore what's there. So you know, and you're in. Okay.
Thank you.
Send me your notes, your questions, your whatever. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jim.
You bet. See you, Jody.